creatures of the deep. When you call my name, giant waves they break. We're creatures of the deep. When you call my name, giant waves they break.
This presentation is about deleted files, and the main point we're going to talk about is that deleted files are still there. There are three parts to a file. The first part is metadata, which includes quite a bit of information about the file, including the following: the file name, the creation date, and there can be a lot of other dates too in this metadata, such as the date it was last accessed, and so forth. And the third really important piece of metadata for what we're going to be talking about right now is the starting cluster. Clusters are the way that hard drives are separated into small 8K chunks, and each file has a starting cluster so that the operating system knows where the file starts. So the metadata is the first part. The second part is the cluster data, or the cluster map. This is how the operating system keeps track of which clusters belong to a given file. The cluster map starts with the starting cluster, and then from that point on you can tell where the next cluster is, where the next cluster after that is, and so forth. And finally, the third most obvious part of a file is the actual file data itself. For instance, if you're storing an Excel file, it would be the actual Excel data. A bitmap file, it would be the actual bitmap data. And this is stored on the device within the clusters that are mapped in the cluster data. Okay, so a healthy, normal file has three items. All three items are there: the metadata describing the file, the cluster map telling the operating system where the file's data is, and the actual file data that is on the device. When Windows displays a folder and all of its contents, the file's metadata is queried for information such as the file name, the creation date, attributes, and so forth. When Windows reads a file, it uses the starting cluster that can be found in the metadata to know where on the device to start reading. Then it uses the cluster map to read subsequent clusters. So deleted files are almost identical to normal healthy files. When a file is deleted, most of the file data remains. The file data that is stored on the device is 100% untouched, at least initially. The metadata is slightly altered so that the file is marked as deleted, but most of the metadata itself remains totally intact. The cluster map is removed so that the operating system knows that the clusters which the deleted file used to occupy are now free to be used by other files. Since the cluster map is removed, recovery of fragmented files is much more difficult. That is because recovery software has to use a best guess method to reconstruct the cluster map. For instance, if a file's data hopscotched from cluster to cluster in no particular order or randomly, then it's a really difficult matter to search and scan the hard drive and try to find which is the cluster that goes with that file. Since deleted files are marked as deleted, the file data can possibly be overwritten at a later time by another file. So in conclusion, many, if not most, files can be recovered once they are deleted. And actually, the smaller a file is, the easier it is to recover and the better your chances are. But the odds of recovering a file that's the same as the original, meaning that the data has 100% integrity, are much higher if there's little or no activity on the device between the time of deleting and the time when the file is recovered. That is because the operating system marks the file as deleted, and then if you write a bunch of files or write a bunch of data, there's a pretty high probability that the file data, or the clusters that used to contain the file data, will be overwritten. And lastly, a defragmented drive makes recovering files with 100% integrity a much better bet. That's because a defragmented hard drive means that the clusters are all in order, so when they get deleted and the cluster map is gone, you can simply go through sequential clusters and do the recovery.